For a lot of us, the idea of being alone is kind of scary, right? We're always told a good life is a busy one, packed with people. But what if that's not the whole picture? Today, we're going to look at it from a totally different angle, how being alone, if you do it right, can actually be your greatest source of strength. And this quote from the Buddha, it just flips that whole idea on its head. He's saying that being alone isn't something you should be afraid of. It's actually a place where you can find real joy. I mean, in the world we live in today, with our phones buzzing all the time, that's a pretty wild idea. And that's exactly what we're going to dig into. Okay, so where does this fear come from? Why are we so scared of something that spiritual leaders have talked about for, ever? Well, it all boils down to this clash between two totally different ideas of what a good life even is. And I mean, the difference is huge. On one side, you have society telling you that success means you're always connected, always getting likes, always surrounded by people. But then, on the other side, you've got almost every spiritual tradition saying, nope, real peace comes from being alone. Just think about it. So many of the greatest minds in history had to get away from all the noise just to think clearly. And this is really the main point. Being alone isn't good or bad. It's just a tool. A really powerful one. And just like any tool, it all comes down to how you use it. You can use it to build yourself up, or you can let it tear you down. The choice is yours. So really get a handle on this, let's dive into an incredible story. It's about Prince Siddhartha, the guy who would eventually become the Buddha. His life is the perfect example of trying to find that sweet spot. So the prince started out at one extreme, living in a palace with literally every pleasure you can imagine. But that felt empty, so he swung all the way to the other side. He went into the forest, and for 6 long years, he basically denied himself everything. But in the end, he figured out that the real answer wasn't in having everything or having nothing. It was somewhere in the middle. And this is where the story gets really interesting. His big aha moment didn't come when he was surrounded by followers, and it didn't come when he was pushing his body to the limit. Nope, it came when he was completely, unexpectedly, all by himself. So after those 6 years of starving himself, Siddhartha decided, you know what, I need to eat. And he accepted a simple meal. But his 5 buddies, who were all in on the extreme stuff, saw this as a total betrayal. They thought he'd given up, so they just left him. And just like that, boom, he was truly alone for the first time. No one to impress, no followers, nobody watching his every move. This could have been the end of his story, right? Being abandoned. But it was actually the real beginning. And this really gets to the heart of it. Being alone wasn't a curse for him, it was an opportunity. Because he was finally free from what everyone else thought, he could stop looking outward for answers and just focus on himself. And it was right there, in that perfect, quiet solitude, that he sat under the Bodhi tree and became the Buddha. His greatest moment came directly from being left all alone. How about that? So the Buddha's story isn't just a cool piece of history, it's like a map for us. So how do we use these lessons when we're the ones feeling lonely? Let's take that ancient wisdom and see how it fits into our lives today. We've all been there, right? That heavy, kind of draining feeling you get from being lonely. And what's our first instinct? To run away from it, to binge a show, to scroll on our phones, anything to not feel it. But what if you could actually use that energy? Okay, let's get a little scientific for a second. There's this thing called the law of energy. It basically says you can't create or destroy energy, you can only change its form. I want you to think about the energy of loneliness in exactly the same way. And that right there is the big secret. You can't just wish away that negative feeling of loneliness. It's impossible. But what you can do is convert it. You can transform it into something useful, something positive. So, the big question is, how do we do that? How do we become these emotional alchemists, turning the lead of loneliness into the gold of self-discovery? Well, the answer is surprisingly simple, and it comes down to one powerful idea. A huge reason we feel lonely is because we don't have a purpose. See, when you have a goal, something you're working towards, your whole mindset shifts. You stop focusing on what you're missing, and you start focusing on what you're building. And hey, these goals don't have to be about, changing the world. It could be a material goal, like saving up for something you want. Or it could be a spiritual goal, like working on a weakness or trying to become a better person. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you have a direction. Now, to really make progress on these things, you need time to focus. Real, uninterrupted time. And you know when the best time for that is? When you're all alone. That's when your solitude becomes your personal workshop. Okay, so how do we actually start doing this? Don't worry, you don't need to go on a silent retreat for a month. It all starts with something small, something you can do every single day.
15 minutes. That's it. That's the challenge. The first practical step you can take, starting right now, is to find just 15 minutes a day that are for you and you alone.
But there are a few ground rules for this me time, and they're really important. No phone, no Netflix, no distractions. Period. It's just you and your thoughts. And look, it's probably going to feel a little weird at first, maybe even uncomfortable. That's totally normal. That's actually part of the point. Because the whole goal here is to learn how to just be with yourself, to get comfortable in your own head. By sitting with your thoughts, you're training yourself to turn your focus inward. You're literally taking that restless, lonely energy and turning it into something powerful, self-awareness. So let's try to flip the script. Instead of seeing time alone as this empty void you need to fill, try seeing it as a space you get to explore. It's not about what you're missing out on out there. It's about what you can find in here. So the only question left is, what will you discover in your solitude?